Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good morning, Rush Nation. Here we are. Week 1 is in the books, and I thought rather than doing a load of fancy analysis, which you can get tonight from all of us, I would do an FFCC show. So I know everyone listening to this is in the FFCC. Maybe there's some of you that aren't, and if you aren't, then where were you? And hopefully we'll get you in next year. So with regards to the FFCC, the first round is done. We are officially at our first cut of the season. And that just means that 68 people have left the main event this morning. And as a result, move into the Squid Game. So I thought before this show is going to have the 68 that have dropped into the Squid Game. We're going to then do the draw. And I've got the draw set up for the main event, round 2. And explain that, and then we'll draw the Squid Game prompt of what you're going to have to survive to make it through to another week. So here we are. Without further ado, here are the names of those that we lost this week in the FFCC. And you can see here that the cut line was just short of 184 points. I did set updates throughout the day. It looked like it was going to be 200 after 33%, and then we were looking at 185 after 70%. The cut line moved to just short of 184 points. So the first person out was Nuosa. Now, this person missed by less than a yard, 0.09 points they missed. Jazza, our champion from 2 years ago, he was eliminated, unfortunately, and falls into Squid Game. Maybe he'll be the first champion of Squid Game. We will see what happens. RFM, you're in or you're out. Schaefer, Biocell U, FF Blues Brother, Peter, unfortunately, just missed. Schimanzi, a couple of my FFCC, BFFL brothers are in here. Lee, our podcast man, Lee is here, and he unfortunately just missed. Luke Woodford, Ali Cook of the Dynasty, Wildcard, unfortunately misses out. Painatron, Mr. Britt Towers himself, unfortunately, just falls 3.5 points short. Josh Conn and Kit of Fantasy Game Day misses out. Coach Steve, Ridley Scott, James Hubbard, my good buddy from SFB 10, I believe. Maybe even SFB 9, O-Town Steve unfortunately misses out. Ryan Hallam, really good friend of mine, unfortunately misses out too. Great analyst. Make sure you check out all his work. Stormo, one of last year's quarterfinalists, maybe even semi-finalists. Unfortunately falls at the first hurdle this year. Nate Markham, Nessie FFB, Mungry Pablo, the Zach Bradley of Fantasy Advice, Doomy McSlavage, Chris Fox, Drew Davenport, who was on the show a few weeks ago, unfortunately, gets cut here into Squid Game. Haldane, P. Bomanio, Ian Harrow of Jefferson My Drinks, unfortunately gets cut. Marathon RG, who's had a couple of deep runs in there, gets cut. Brian Drake, last year's Intercontinental Plate winner, won't be defending his plate. He was hoping for a main prize. He will have to try and win the Squid Game. Aardvark 71, McGonagall, Marty 88, SOS MVP, Flavorize This, one of my good friends, initial and inaugural Warrior Bowl champ, Steve Perkins falls. He's had a couple of deep runs in this tournament in the past. Wendy Early, great analyst and Battle of the Sexes. Legzilla, Philosopher King, Fegs 23, Rich King, obviously Rich King Fantasy Sports gets cut here. Rookie, Fantasy Football Country, Suarez Power, my good buddy Tony, who allows me into his home league, Obi-Wan Nakobe, he gets cut here. Tom Scott, formerly of 5-Yard College, is cut. 89 Monday, Jay Goldberg, Poppy Kimmish had a deep run in JTT last year, makes his cut. Jord, M87, again, former 5 Rush college or 5 college rider and 5 Rush writer, missed it. Stevie HC, good Bucks fan, friend of mine, misses the cut. Matt Guys, Kaflakov, Groovy, Gary Thorpe is in my UFC league and a lot of other leagues in the community. He has been cut. Dr. Squat. Last year's finalist, ADZT666, has been cut. Big Doe's been cut. Mike Reddy, who is Fantasy Football Untouchables, he's been cut. Chris Dales. AVFC JPS, good friend of mine, James, has been cut, unfortunately. Again, there's quite a few BFFL brothers have been cut this week from Hillsborough. Number 9, Johnny Tiers. Jeremy Harder, who's a good Gooners friend of mine, who's a Green Bay fan. And bottom of the pile, MXP4103 with a score of 130. I mean, brutal. I saw a lot of injuries, haven't dug into that roster. This is all the names of those that have been cut from the main event. So if your name is not on here, congratulations, you have made the main event. 256 of you remain, which means we will move on to our next showing here, which is going to be the draw itself. So I've done the draw in advance. So I'm going to just pull it up here. Here is the bracket. I will share the link to the bracket. I apologize for the ads. This website does really nice brackets, but it does have an awful lot of ads. And so I don't get into trouble. I'm going to just mute these. Okay. Here is the bracket. I have in here as well put the brackets of the division. You'll notice you'll more than likely be playing a division opponent in round 1. There are a couple of instances where that doesn't happen, as you can see later on. So it's myself versus Adam Foxcroft, BDP18 against Posh Cartledge, Sean McCormick versus Reese Dog, JJN UFC versus Chris Budge, PHK Gator versus Dom Clee, Lanky 1974 versus Rich M302, The Boy E versus JTT Cup, Crewer 128 versus Hegerton, Jack CDC TT versus Hannah, Real Betty's versus Greg of the Warrior Bowl, Corey Hurt 827 versus A Ray 50, T Strack, always beloved known as Tom Strachan, is playing BBILW from Canada. Jay Goody 77 is against the Juicy Ren. Ram's dad is against Pac Tamez. Pestle of formerly of Fields of Fantasy, now the TH Fantasy Football Podcast, is playing good buddy of mine, Bill Sherler. FF Mad Scientist is up against Kelly. Wyatt, who does loads of great work in the fantasy football community, especially around Scottish Bowl time, so go check out his stuff, is up against good buddy of mine, 97 Phil B, fellow Bucks fan. Dan Blackman is up against Smitty1221. Evdokius is up against Dutz. Neil Dutton, probably the trailblazer of the UK fantasy football community, by country where he writes for a lot of great publications. So that's going to be a good matchup. Dolphin Abroad is up against Jim Hay, former finalist of this competition. Island Ninjas against RB Raven 30. Brown T versus Tarek 2907. Gasson versus Dave Bailey 8. Pat Toll versus Matt Leo. Orkney Bowl against Pitsy, going to be a good battle, that one. Crispy 83 versus Sin City Heat. M Garmo against Rob McSee. Gridirony against Mark C. Dodd. That's a couple of 5-yard patrons going up against each other in the draw here. Brown Bear 24 against A Ford 86. The Retro Coach against Wild Rosie. Tony Harrison 28 against Giraffe Sass. Nicole K against Major Malou. AM Nicholson versus Hoss. Stop Pooping against Danny T. J Les against former JTT Cup winner Gradient 97. Mark Dobinson versus FF Goat Ball. The Belldozer versus Andy Smale. Kylie versus Ben Isaacs. And go check out his books and publications and everything that he does. Bobbish Squirrel versus Commissioner Casey. Kev White of Wildcard, Fantasy Wildcard against James Varley, who's in one of my home leagues. He's a good guy. Sol Pratt 99 versus FF Relevant. Mike Aspie versus Tall Paul 09. Will Day 28, who's had a deep run in this competition, the pass against Rich Bilkey. Paul Peckin, who actually was our number one overall scorer, and I'll show those scores in just a second. He was finished top of the pile in round one. He is up against Captain Bullshot. Babo Joshua, that is Kurt from South Africa, great guy, against one of the Patreons. Stevie 31, the FF rookie against Kev Mark. Base Luzmani against former champion V-Guard, and then another former champion, Jack Humphrey, is drawn against Dynasty Island. A battle of the community there for sure. One of the picks of round one, or round two as we're calling it. No love lost between these two when it comes to fantasy football duels, and I'm sure they'll enjoy this one. Folio is, of the Warrior Bowl is up against the Joey Wright. Stephen Munger against the Fantasy 5. AJ Simo 97 against Luke Eagles Fly. Pee-wee 31 against IWT 25. Mickey 1103 is off against Joe Dolan of fantasypoints.com. Lucky Fantasy Guy, long-term supporter of this competition. Martin, well known in the community, up against Nick Tastics. Fitch Tragics against Reflips. I can't ever pronounce the name, but a good guy I've played with in NSFB before. Ben Ray 101 against Web Jorm. Scottish Ram against Sam Ram. Clearly the battle of the Rams here in this draw. Shanizi is up against Stocks in this matchup, and Cali King 49er 17. That is Mason. He is up against Bob Lung in a huge battle there. Daniel enters a Patreon here, is up against Hallam of the JMD podcast. Tyden is up against Matt Watt. Tundra Boy, really great bloke here, up against Gaming Teacher, founder of the MND Bowl. So good battle to be had there for sure. Tom and Tom and company are going to have good fun with that one. Hawaii 3G, it's my guy Greg, legend from Hawaii, up against Honeywell 11. Matt Thornton, formerly of the Wildcard podcast and man famous for predicting or calculating the weather, he is up against Ben Rolfe of PFN. Ginger Mamba 87 versus Geist Baby. Pete McManus of the JMD podcast up against Martin McGregor. Jim Coventry of Roto Wire up against BMC 52. NFL Hype Train of Full 10 Yards, Full 10 Yards, I guess, podcast or writing against Brad Levo. Rob M24 against Paddy of Nerdball. Index of Sus against Joe Tom 016. Donish G22 against Blues X-Man. Blue Goose Patreon up against the defending champion Earl English. I've not done him a favor with that draw, that's for sure. Defending champion through to round two. Eagle Dan up against Wardy Patreon here, who's also advanced here. A lot of the patrons getting through, which is great. Micah Dynasty FF against Ima walking here. Eddie Fan 12 against C Rigo. K-State Fan versus FF Shane B. Good to have Shane here. Polly's playoffs and all the great work that he does. D-Red C versus the Gun by Beard. Duffers 81 versus Zerg Rush. Kieran Hill 3 versus Charlie of former winner of the JTT Cup. Bingy 3 against Kangasman. Mike Floyd versus Eddie Boom. Jester 36 against Josh Jr. 11. S Charcoals versus Stony 15. S Evans 1308 against Mark of the Fordo Touchdown Network and formerly of our podcast as well, doing great DFS content. Man against that UK Gator guy. Alan Sampson versus Pig Skin Bulls. Rich UK Swinger Mystery. Lionheart Dad of the Lionheart Bowl against John Cartwright. Rob Warner DC against Jack 25521. Dan Hughes, my former podcast buddy, against former Dynasty co-host Liam in a form about the 5 Yard Rush. anchors of the network past. Steelers 58 gets Rayfin KD8. Jambear Bra versus Lucho NLN. Raiders Butt 64 against Pizza Rookie. He ended up Patreon through there. Timmy Boy versus J Football Wine of Roto Underworld. Alex Hall, Buccaneers fan, good friend of mine, against Elliot Props. Pat Fitzmaurice of Fantasy Pros up against Hot Seat Mags. It's going to be a classic duel for sure of Fantasy Wildcard, Fantasy Hot Dynasty Hot Seat. Danny Boy 51 against Doombot 12. Jay Griff against Dizzle. What's the Sitch? Nate the Saint versus Dingaling 75. Ryan Cooper 83 versus Hello You Punt. Good to see Meeksy get through to round 2. PR Falcons UK. Good to see Paul through to round 2. He's always sort of struggled to get out of round 1, so I know he'll be happy with that. Dynasty Dorks, great content. He does, check him out. Duarte 5656 versus Ember Falco 93. He's a great guy. I drafted with him in the live last year of Scottish Bowl. Smiler Rob 91 versus Ash Perry 83. Mugs NFL. Check out all the merch he does. So follow him on X. He's doing some great sort of jackets at the moment that you can get for a really, really good first. Versus Razorback 12 of the Fantasy Football Advice channel. Check them out. Perfect Shizzle versus Gymnastic. Jack 608 against Joe P. Superior Fantasy Pros. That'd be a good one. And this one I know for Towers Nation and Orkney Bowl as well will have a lot of relevance, especially for the Orkney Bowl channel, because it's Pork Belly 322 versus Pesby 89. These guys will be playing each other in round 2 for the fight to continue on. Shard 312 versus Will Barrow. El Marco is up against Burner is Lush. Stevie Fox YNWA is up against Andy Davis Sport. As 2 Liverpool fans there, I would assume, playing each other's. Roman Esicalicio, Mike Dixon versus Mike Dixon 22 Patriots. Main Z7 against Ryan Miller FFB. Will Real versus For Whom Jeff Bell Tolls. Make sure you check out all of Jeff Bell's content on Football Guys. He's an absolute brilliant bloke. Clever Sharp Mighty Bush is up against IDP Iggy, 2 of my favorite people who I think are absolutely brilliant. That's going to be a great matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing those 2 go off, and they're up against JB Barry and Rui in the next bracket, which is a great matchup as well. Rambin T8N versus Davey GNR 111. Some guy FF versus Shia LaBeouf. That's not the Shia LaBeouf, don't worry about that. Darcy Dodd versus Rob Smith. Robbie Smith 11. One Dave Hendo. I know this charity means a lot to him. Against Ronnie Evans, Mr. Football. That's a great matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. The General 1984 versus Prodigy Nigir 86. I've roughed that. I'm so sorry. D Whitmore against Toro Tenrojo. DRM 5515 versus Batch 4547. Pippin versus FF Hep, who does a lot of work with Dynasty Outhouse and stuff around Eliminators. Absolutely great dude. P155272 versus Herman 87 does a great charity best ball tournament as well. Emlap C versus Cantaloupe FF, who Jordan's a great bloke and very funny content on Twitter, so check him out. G-Men J, who I love to pieces, absolutely brilliant bloke, up against another very good friend of mine, Kevin Tompkins, and check out both of their content and on their handles, which are here on the X Machine. Benlaw 96 against Addy Fields 87, and the Game is Done versus Captain Cook 97. That was a lot of names. But that's the draw. I'll put a link to it so you can see it and you can start to map and path your way through to World Championship glory. Don't forget, this is a 1 week round. From after this week, it will be 2 weeks round, which means from here on out, this is a 1 week shootout to progress to the next round. Winners will stay in the main event. The losers will drop out to the Intercontinental Plate, which is the 3rd competition. So we will soon know who is in every single competition starting next week. Just before we get into everything, I guess we should do a quick review of the scores. So we'll give people their due. So we should see here, Paul Pickin, as I said, 322 points It definitely put up the score of the week, followed by P155272216, Pez B 89 310, and the defending champion Earl English 301, and then Claire Bouchard Mighty Bush round up the only people over 300 points. There's quite a gap then back to Stony 15, Stillers 58, who are 9 points adrift of that one. So again, these guys and girls definitely sort of separating themselves here and making a good name for themselves and a great start to this tournament. See some familiar names from the British community here. Mags up there, Matt Thornton, Andy Campbell, 3 guys. Mason, I know he's not British, but he's like honorary British with how much he's integrated with our community. And he had a deep run. He's a former finalist of this competition as well, so one to definitely watch. Aaron, FF Mad Scientist, absolutely great guy. Check out his work on the FF universe. Being on his pod, he's a brilliant guy as well. Yeah, you can see here, just scrolling down, Hannah Rowland is in here. Really good score, 260 to set the tone nice and early. The retro coach, all the great work that he does, 253. Former champion V-Guard, 251. So again, Dan H, 246. That's Dan Hughes. You can see some really good scores. Folio here, 242. There's Gaming Teacher, 241. Joe Dolan, 241. Again, these are where the scores start to. There's Liam at 236. So you're starting to see these scores now. All of these, don't forget, all these are still over 200. So you can see me there in 102nd place with 226.81, comfortably through, but way to go, a bit away back from these. The good thing is all these scores effectively don't matter after this week. But you want to be nearer you don't want to get yourself into some trouble. There's stocks there, not too far behind me. Jim Coventry here. So all these names were really comfortably safe. Come the cut line, and then you start to see here when we're getting closer to the 190s, the cut line's going. So this is already like 226 with Martin Lucky Fancy Guy 228. Daniel enters. You'll see where the cut line is. So these guys got in, and girls, but here's the cut line. And you can see how close it was. So all of these got some last second points to get themselves up over this cut line. It was very, very close. And again, champion from 2 years ago, James Allen, just falling short by just 0.3. Yeah, 0.33 of a point. It's just a few yards out. And these were these that fell out of our competition into the Squid Game. And so the Squid Game begins this week. And so it's about time we find out what the prompt is, don't we? So here we are. Now, the Squid Game. People were a bit confused by the Squid Game. And that's fine. I understand why people will get confused by the Squid Game. It is a unique thing. So effectively, every week, I'm going to come up with prompts. And these prompts will determine what you need to pass the level and proceed to the next round, or basically just stay alive. And the idea is eventually we will have one winner. If we get to a stage where a prompt does wipe out everybody, then I'll bring a certain amount back based on how many are in the competition to keep the game going a little bit longer and give people effectively an extra life. So we have 67 here in the Squid Game, 68, sorry, here in the Squid Game. And so we will start to see how this wins out. I've put, I guess, as prompts this week, I want to say a reasonable prompt. I don't think it's going to, I think it's one that will probably get a bit of the field, but I don't think it's going to wipe out like a huge chunk of the field. Like I can't see this wiping out half the field, but I guess we'll soon see, right? I'm just sort of blowing this up a bit. So you can see here, some of the prompts going around. In fact, by zooming in too much, I've got rid of what the prompts said. So here they are here on the side. Let's close the ads. So again, these are some of the sample prompts. Only one of these will matter. So one wide receiver scoring 15 plus points, one QB scoring 19 plus points, one tight end scoring 13 plus points, one kicker scoring 12 plus points, one RB scoring 15 plus points, both kickers combining for 22 points, both QBs combining for 28 points. At least some of these might kill quite a lot of people potentially. At least 30 RB points combined, at least 30 wide receiver points combined. That's from the starting lineup, not what's on the bench. And one player in your team must score 20 plus points. So it's luck of the draw. Some of these will be easier to hit than others. That's kind of the point of Squid Game. And we'll see what happens. Anyway, this week's prompt. Oh, okay. At least 30 wide receiver points. So if you're in the Squid Game, if you're one of those names that did not make it through, you will need your wide receivers. Now, if they count as your flex, it's best ball, so it's best allotted players. So there is can't just fabricate and put extra players in. It's all down to your team. But this could be kind of a kind one. I would say this one's probably a bit nicer than some of the other prompts that were in here. So you're looking at your team having 30, your wide receivers on your team in your starting 11 or starting team having 30 wide receiver points. Now that is 3 starting wide receivers and potentially your flexes, and maybe even your super flex if you haven't got any quarterbacks. So I'd like to think that this one's quite a nice, easy starter. I can see most people sort of falling over this line quite easily. So we're going to see what happens next week when we do the prompts, and we'll see how many of our Squid Gamers we eliminate from the competition. We'll also find out what happens with those that will fall into the Intercontinental Cup if they lose their main event matchup this week, and who will progress to the last 128 in the FFCC proper. And then from there, we'll move into 2-week matchups. Hope that all makes a lot of sense. If you're struggling a bit, do feel free to reach out and ask me some questions. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you have enjoyed the tournament so far. Oh, and there's one more thing. There's always one more thing. The 2025 signups are open. They're at the bottom of this video. When I share this video later on, I will share the link as well. So get your place now. £10 donation is the suggested amount. Obviously, you can donate more. But any donation here will guarantee your place in the 2025 field of all this madness. And the scoring will change next year. So if you got a little bit put off by the kickers, that's not to say that will be what the scoring is next year. It might be something completely different and mad. But as you can see, lots of fun competitions, lots of fun prizes, but more importantly, money to be raised for charity. So if interested in signing up for the 2025 FFCC, and I really hope you all are, then please do sign up via the sign-up sheet attached in the bottom of the notes here. And it will also go out in the groups as well. So please do sign up for 2025. Keep supporting all the charity and all the great work that we do. And don't forget to hit a like and subscribe on the channel here. If you've just come in to tune in for this, don't tune out on any other work we do, then please do give us at least a subscribe, but hopefully a bit more than that, because we appreciate it as we're trying to reach more people, do more things, as we're on the road to 900 podcasts since we started 5 Yard Rush. So please do give us that like and follow and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's nice and easy to do. So please do join us on that. But until next time, favorite FFCC people and Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.